to Nerding on the Dbacks. I'm Son/Phoenix, and
I'm Dad/Chris.
So yeah, we're going to be nerding on the Dbacks, and for this podcast, I feel like it's going to be different from all the other podcasts that other people have, because I actually don't know baseball that well. So I hope any of our listeners that listen to our podcast will also learn more about baseball, because I don't know a lot about baseball, and you're a freak and just know way too much about baseball, like way too much.
I am a bit of an analytics nerd when it comes to the data. So yeah, kind of what we want to do with this podcast, as you're listening in, is we want to focus on the Diamondbacks, especially after their World Series run, which was awesome, and we'll get to that. But we want to really kind of take a more advanced analytical and metrics approach to this. And like my son was saying, Phoenix, that he's kind of got a rudimentary level of understanding of baseball.
I know what batting average is and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And stuff. I'm just like, what is
yeah. So we're going to be going through and talking about baseball, about the Diamondbacks, and Phoenix is kind of going to be the surrogate here for the general fan, as I'm going to go through and explain everything a little bit more in depth so you guys get to understand what all this stuff means. Yeah. But also we're going to learn a little bit more about the Diamondbacks and have some really fun discussions about what we think they should be doing and with their off season, recapping what they've done. And of course, once we get into the season, we are planning on doing this once a week and going forward, and we'll discuss the comings and goings as the season goes on. So, all right. Well, let's launch into it a little bit. First, went to the AFL Home Run Derby last week.
It was very fun.
It was awesome. We were in a section where there was a very excited man, probably around 25-ish, who he had a GoPro with a blue shirt. If you're out there, I'm glad you're hearing this, because you really made a scene. Yeah. And he was pushing over kids, 10 and 12-year-old kids, 8-year-old kids, trying to go chase down baseballs. You didn't get hit.
No, I did not go into that stuff, because I just knew I couldn't catch a ball really, and then I heard a bunch of parents arguing about this guy who just keeps shoving kids, and I just didn't want to get involved. But then they got kicked. Security came and kicked him out.
Yeah. Incredible. What a scene. That was something else. I can't believe that guy.
And it's an AFL game. It's not an actual home run derby.
It's
and there's like a bunch of kids just let them play.
Yeah. It's a home run derby. It's not even a game ball.
Yeah.
But because of me specifically talking to security, your younger brother, he got a baseball. Security pulled one from the batter's eye area. So
there was this place, and it was like center field, and there was these two rails, and I have no idea why, but you could not go into that area. So a ball got into that area, and the security guard came and gave my little brother a little baseball. So.
That's right. From our very own Ivan Melendez here for the Diamondbacks.
The Diamondbacks.
Yeah. And actually that area of the field, in case you don't know as a listener, that area of the field is called the batter's eye. And the reason they don't let people back there is so that the batter has a dark green, sometimes black, depending on the field, background to see the ball out of the pitcher's hand better. And so it's called the batter's eye. All right.
Yeah, so I'm already learning it.
So Diamondbacks, of course, had an amazing World Series run that kind of petered out a little bit at the end in 5 games. But wow, they were playing almost all the way till into November. That was incredible. And we did go to one game.
We went to one game.
We went to not in the World Series, but against the Phillies.
I think it was game 5.
It was game 3.
It was game 3.
When they had the walk-off hit.
Yeah, by Ketel Marte.
That's right. And my gosh, was that the coolest sports thing you've ever been to?
I think so, because holy crap, it was loud. Everybody was crazy. And actually, in the game, I don't know, they might have been like 18 or 19. They actually got kicked out, and it was Like, it was crazy.
From our section.
Yeah, it was from our section too.
Apparently we go to the wrong places in these games. Yeah, it was so loud. Your little brother Limerick, he was sitting there covering his ears for like the first 2 innings we were there.
We had to put the rally towel over him, tie it, and just
try to give him earmuffs.
Yeah, we didn't bring him headphones or anything.
That's right. All right, so now that the series is over, they made a great run. Hopefully gives them a little bit more room. Lovello, after the series, it was announced, was extended from 2026. Yes. Lovello from my hometown team, the Minnesota Twins, he was the bench coach there before he took over as manager of the Dbacks. He's absolutely incredible. He was pushing all the right buttons to get that team through to the World Series. His moves on how he was managing that lineup and that bullpen and that pitching staff in general, incredible. And
you got to know, they haven't been to the World Series since 2001, I'm pretty sure.
I believe that's correct.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's absolutely crazy that I got to experience going to a playoff game, and it was just absolutely crazy to just see my hometown team just in the World Series. I just never thought I would see that. I mean, they're a great team.
It may, God willing, they're back again in the next few years, but it is a rare occurrence.
And they played some tough teams, like the Dodgers, the Phillies.
And those Rangers, they just pulled it off at the end. Speaking of the Rangers, did you hear Ian Kennedy, former Diamondbacks player, retired afterwards, and because he was on the Rangers roster this year, he got himself a World Series ring. Went out on top. He actually he had a good 3-year run with the with the Diamondbacks, with 2011 actually being the best season of his career. And he was a rare pitcher in that one of only 15 pitchers in MLB history to win 100 games and save 50 games.
That's crazy.
Yeah. So let's go look at towards 2024 here. Some of the players that are up whose contract expired that are important are Tommy Pham, who they picked up. Amazing midseason pickup by Hazen.
He's great.
He was incredible down the stretch and came up with some clutch hits in the World Series and in the playoffs in general. Just fantastic.
Yes.
Longoria, who was a solid role player, veteran presence.
Yes.
And of course, household favorite.
Yes, I love Lourdes Gurriel.
We really hope he's back. We'll talk a little bit more about that.
I hope he's back because he is one of my favorite players. He's just, and it's mostly because of the hair, but he's a great player. He's pretty good in that outfield. He can hit some dingers.
Yep. He is a player who does everything well. He doesn't do anything. He doesn't strike out much. He walks at a decent rate. Has a fair amount of homers. He doesn't do anything great, but he just doesn't do anything poorly. He's just solid across the board. He's a really good player to have.
Yes.
And then of course they're also losing Wade Miley and Melanson, but honestly those guys were non-factors for 2023.
They weren't really that good.
Yeah. So moving on. So what does all this mean for 2024? So here's what we're going to go over: what they have and what their needs are, and then our plan is to kind of cap where they are right now, and then next week kind of look at some free agents that they can bring on board to fill holes. So first, let's talk about the outfield. Who do we got in the outfield here, Phoenix, coming back?
So in our outfield we got Alec Thomas, who was just really incredible, and we also have
Corbin Carroll,
goodness.
How could you forget the MVP contender and Rookie of the Year?
Goodness.
Yeah. So let's talk about Alec Thomas first. Then this is kind of incredible. I actually think Alec Thomas might be the best center fielder in the National League right now. He led the league in DRS, which is defensive runs saved, and OOA, which is outs above average in center field in the National League on a per inning basis. So what DRS is defensive runs saved. That's just how many runs. It's an estimator, but they use essentially StatCast data to find out how many runs they are saving compared to other center fielders based on balls that center fielders are getting to. And so it's a little different metric than outs above average, which is how many more outs they get. And outfielder outs are worth more than infielder outs generally, because outfielder outs are usually saving extra bases, doubles and triples, and occasionally home runs, which lead to more runs than infielder outs, which are mostly singles. And so yeah, I am really excited for this guy. He is just an absolute rock star to watch play defense in center field. I don't love Jamie Carroll. I always say Jamie Carroll. Old Marlins player, for those of you who know, and bounced around the league a little bit. Anyway, Corbin Carroll.
Yes.
The dude's incredible.
Yeah.
He has 4 incredible tools. He can hit. He can hit the ball hard. He is fast. He has a great glove. But man, does he have a noodle arm.
He had an amazing career, and it was
amazing first season.
Amazing first season, not career. I mean, well, I never know, but yeah, it was crazy to watch him, because every time he got on, almost every time he just got either a run in or he got on base. And it was...
Stole a base.
And he stole a base. He got on base and he stole a base, and he was just... it was crazy to watch him on TV and in person.
Unquestionably the best player on the Diamondbacks. One of, has already put himself in the discussion as one of the 10 best players in Major League Baseball.
It was crazy. And he's a rookie.
And he was a rookie, yeah. So I would like to see, we were talking earlier, like to see Corbin Carroll move over to left field. Right field's not really, Thomas has got to take over center. He's pretty much got to be, at this point, the everyday center fielder. Thomas does have strong platoon splits, and a platoon split means he is a left-handed hitter. And so they call it the strong side of the platoon. So he would be the strong side of the platoon. So being a left-handed hitter, he's going to face right-handed pitchers mostly, because you get a better matchup.
Yes.
And so he is the strong side, because he's going to get more at bats as a left-handed batter if they platooned him. So he has strong platoon splits, and it would actually be kind of ideal, we'll get back to this, but finding a really solid outfielder who could be a platoon partner with him, a right-handed bat, might be a great pickup. But we'll move on. And so hopefully Carroll can move out to right field. Left field. They've got a young prospect coming up. He's only 20. He's only going to be 23 years old when 2024 starts. You want to tell the people a little bit more about him? Talk about his height.
Okay, so when my dad was saying it was an AFL game. He might be the new short king, and his name is Jorge Barrosa, and he's 5'5". I think
You're like 5'2".
Yeah, like 5'2". So I'm like 3 feet under him.
3 inches.
Yeah, and my friend is maybe taller than him by
It might be
by an inch.
Yeah.
He's a switch hitter. That's pretty good.
He plays center field.
Yes.
And he's solid in center field too, by all accounts. He's pretty fast, and he has a decent arm. So kind of, he's a really, really good, solid contact hitter.
Yes.
And he's actually, this is the most impressive thing, is he was at AAA, and over the last couple of seasons, he has really improved his numbers, developing particularly a great eye at the plate and some power. He's got nearly a 1-to-1 strikeout to walk ratio, which is incredible. Typically, when you're in the minors, the best players are probably getting a 2-to-1 strikeout to walk ratio, because that's probably going to translate, once you're facing the best pitchers in the world at the MLB level, it's probably going to translate to a 3-to-1 ratio. And that he's got a 1-to-1 ratio at AAA is so impressive. He's got, he could be, if all things break right, he comes out at like his 80th percentile outcome. He could definitely be a 3 hitter in the lineup. He's probably going to be more of like a 6 hitter in a good lineup, but having that batting average that he's bringing to the majors, he realistically might be able to bat 280, 290 at the major league level in the modern environment, which is really good, and that'll drive in a lot of runs. That 1-to-1 strikeout to walk ratio is just outstanding. That said, you have Alek Thomas in center field.
Yes.
You don't really have a need for Jorge Barrosa to play center.
But he could play the other position.
He could play right field. They have a need for a right fielder, and he would fit in great. And plus, how fun would it be to see a 5'5" dude launching a ball at home plate to gun a runner out?
Yeah.
That would be so cool. That would make all the highlight reels. So he might be ready to step in on day one, on opening day, but more than likely he's probably someone that you want to bring up midway through the season, or ideally start him as a fourth outfielder, bringing in somebody else. So what the Diamondbacks probably need to do with their outfield situation is they need to bring in a right-handed hitter, preferably either a center fielder or a true right fielder that can play some center, take over center field for Alek Thomas if he needs it. So I think that's probably what they would look for. There's one great fit on the free agent market right now that I can think of. There's really a couple of great options, but there's one in particular, a guy who we'll talk about next week, who just smashes left-handed pitching that most people don't know about, and he is a former Gold Glove center fielder who is still probably one of the 5 best center fielders in the game. He just can't hit righties. So we'll talk about that though next week.
Yes.
So let's move to the infield here.
Yes.
Do you remember seeing Jordan Lawler playing in the AFL last season?
I think so.
Yeah. He was playing at the game, one of the games we went to, and that kid's fast. He's very fast, and he plays a mean shortstop. So he was up on the major league roster for part of this season. He was on the playoff roster actually. He barely played, which I don't blame him. He blamed the team. He's only, I think, 21 years old. Maybe 22. So he's still got some development. But that said, he was incredible last year in AAA. I'd like to see him get the shortstop job opening day and just run with it. And then, of course, on the right side, we got Cattell.
Yes.
At second base.
Nice.
And first base, we got Christian Walker.
Yep.
And so they're set there. Yep. They got nobody to get. It's, first, second, and short are pretty much locks for the season if they are willing to trust Lawler at shortstop, which I really think they should do. And then you got Perdomo. And while he had a nice first half, his StatCast numbers, for those of you who don't know what StatCast is, it's a tracking mechanism that they have out on all the MLB fields to track how fast the ball is thrown, how many spins a ball makes when it's in the air, how hard it's hit, how fast a guy runs, how good of a route he takes, just so many different things. And so when we're talking about Perdomo, one of the things, if you go to baseballsavant.com, which is the website where StatCast houses all its data, and it's sortable, and it's not all its data. There's actually a ton of data that StatCast doesn't share with the public. Only the teams have access to it. But they use an estimator on there called XWOBA. So we're going to get pretty gnarly here. WOBA is an acronym for weighted on-base average. That means that they're taking their weighting on-base percentage and slugging percentage together. They're basically putting them together, except for they weight on base higher because getting on base is more valuable than extra base hits are typically. With the only exception is a home run. Obviously, a home run's the most valuable hit in baseball, but the next best outcome is not getting out after a home run. And so they weight on base at percentage higher than slug percentage, and they call it weighted on base average. And then StatCast takes that a step further, and they use what's called expected weighted on base average. And that is taking their walks, their strikeouts, as well as their batted ball data. So how hard did they hit the ball, and what was the launch angle of that when it left the bat? Not taking, did it actually go for a hit, but what percentage of hits like that result in a hit.
So why does the launch angle matter?
So good question. So launch angle, an ideal launch angle is typically between 15 and 25 degrees. So you're talking, I can't get this on the camera, 15 and 25 degrees is an ideal launch angle. That's usually a really good solid line drive right over the infield. It's also, the closer to 25 you are, the more likely you are to hit a home run. 30 degree hits, I know it sounds like such a small amount, but a ball going 30 degrees off the bat is often going to result in a fly ball out. It's so hard to hit the ball hard enough. It's so difficult to hit the ball hard enough. You got to hit the ball over 110 miles per hour typically if you're going to get a 30 degree launch angle on it in order to get into the stands.
When the baseballs come in like at 99 and 98 miles per hour, it's very hard to like transfer that into like 101 miles per hour when you're hitting that baseball.
Well, it's the speed of the pitch doesn't actually make that much difference for exit velocity. The bat speed, which unfortunately StatCast Baseball Savant doesn't have that information on their site, but it does exist. It's been reported in some articles with some journalists who have, or bloggers who have access to that StatCast data, but it's not always, it hasn't always, it doesn't get put on Baseball Savant. One day, I can't wait until we can see what bat speeds are, because that's going to be awesome. Bat speeds, attack angle, we're going to get into some really interesting stuff here, but all of that is so all of that is it's so important in the way that they hit the ball. So it's actually about 85 to 90% of exit velocity is this bat velocity and is bat speed, and only about 10 to 15% is the pitch speed that makes it up. So launch angle, getting back to that, under 15 degrees is going lower than that is often going to result in an out unless you hit it really, really hard and it gets over or through the infield. Flat is 0 degrees, and then you could also, most guys, the hardest hit balls in Major League Baseball are almost always right into the ground, almost always straight into the ground, and they're almost always outs. When guys are hitting 115, 116, 114 miles per hour, a lot of times those balls are just being hit into the dirt and being turned into outs, and often double plays even. So that's an explanation of what WOBA is. So getting back to it, Perdomo had a bottom 5 expected WOBA in Major League Baseball last year, despite having a otherwise pretty good season. Now he is a good defender. So in an ideal world, Perdomo is the utility infielder going into next season. You don't want him to be taking over that third base spot. We need to be getting somebody else in, which they've already been linked to Justin Turner. We'll talk a little bit about that. But really, Perdomo is kind of a poor man's Eduardo Escobar. And Emmanuel Rivera, he's honestly he's a guy who's there. He can soak up some innings without embarrassing your team, but he's not someone you want to rely on for offense or defense. His defense is okay at best. So, like I said, they've already been linked to Justin Turner, aka the Leprechaun King. He's a solid hitter. He's been fantastic, but and he'd be a great fit for DH. I'd like keeping DH open as a team so that they can rotate guys around. Maybe put Moreno in at DH more often if they could pick up a backup catcher. But rotating DH is more ideal. But he only played 57 innings of third base last year. Yeah. And he was brutal. He was brutal on defense. No, far from not that great. Far worse than not that great. And he's really had 3 straight seasons now of diminishing performance at the plate. So I don't mind it. The only issue is, and I say this looking at someone like Nelson Cruz, I don't know if you really want to be the guy holding the bag when Justin Turner finally goes, like when he's done, when he just can't hit anymore, when he's OPSing 624 and it's August. I don't know that you want to be the team that's still on the hook for him.
For our viewers who don't know what OPS means, can you explain that?
Yeah. OPS is on base plus slug. So it's like a good on base percentage is 350, and a good slug is 100. And so if you got a guy who can get on base at a 350 clip and slug 400, you got a pretty good ball player on your hands. Someone who, that's a very actually Lourdes Gurriel kind of line right there. He's a little bit better than that, but that's a good place to be. So, and then, like we said before, on base is more valuable than slugging percentages. So, one of the things, I don't really want to talk about free agents much this week, but being that Justin Turner has been linked pretty hard to the Diamondbacks already, I think one of the things worth mentioning, bringing up is what we'd want to see for a contract like that. He declined his option for $13.5 million with the Red Sox, which means he thinks that he can get at least $14 million in the open market. So what I think a good deal for someone like Justin Turner would look like is a 12-year contract with a second-year option at an additional $12 million, yes, which has a $3 million buyout to it. That would guarantee that Justin Turner gets $15 million, which is a $1.5 million raise, because you get the $12 million plus the $3 million if he only plays one season, so he's getting more. And if he plays 2 seasons, you get him at a decent rate, where even if he's not that good, you're not killing yourself on the back half of that contract. That said, I have a feeling he's probably going to get 2 years, and I don't think that's worth it. I don't think that would be a real good idea. So we'll see what ends up happening there. And
we'll talk more about free agents next week.
Yes.
For right now, we're just talking about what's going to go on with the Dbacks for next season, and
yeah, what they have in house right now. So
yes.
So that's the situation. They need a third baseman. Now, catcher, it's in good hands. Gabriel Moreno is an absolute stud. I don't know if you know this, you probably don't. Moreno and Gurriel were traded for, Hazen picked them up from the Blue Jays last offseason in exchange for Dalton Varsho. That's it. Just Moreno alone on that deal is a heist. That they got one season of Gurriel tossed in with it is incredible. What a pickup. Just an absolute heist.
I didn't know that because Lourdes Gurriel is obvious, as you've said before, is my favorite player. And I've done some research on him, and I just know that he's been on the Blue Jays. So when you tell me that Lourdes Gurriel and Moreno were teammates, I just know that they were on the Blue Jays.
That's right.
But enough about the Blue Jays.
Yeah, so that's it. They could use a backup. Moreno's great, but they don't really have a MLB quality backup. And that said, getting a backup's an easy thing to do. We'll discuss that a little bit more down the road, but Gabriel Moreno is incredible. Incredible.
As you also said before, he could be a great DH
he could. If they rotated him in to give him more at-bats, absolutely, because he is certainly, I would say, one of the 4 best hitters on the Diamondbacks right now. And look at how incredible this team is set up. You got Corbin Carroll in the outfield, who was a rookie.
Yes.
You got Gabriel Moreno behind the plate, who was a rookie. And you have Alec Thomas in center field, who is a rookie. Like, wow,
no wonder they made the World Series.
My goodness, when you got 3 rookies coming in like that, what a season for those 3 guys. That's going to be, and then you got Brandon Pfaadt, who is also a rookie.
He's pretty good too.
Yeah, after his first 4 months of baseball in 2023 were pretty ugly. But wow, did he turn that season around.
Yeah.
He was absolutely incredible. I wouldn't say incredible, but he had a FIP. Let me tell you a little bit about FIP. FIP stands for Fielding Independent Pitching. And so typically FIP is considered by pretty much everybody in the industry, in the baseball industry, to be a better predictor of ERA than ERA is. ERA is so volatile, it's everywhere. Where FIP just takes the 3 true outcomes. It takes strikeouts, walks, and home runs, and it multiplies each of those and then divides them by the number of innings, and then you end up with an ERA predictor that underlies what kind of true talent the player is, much better than ERA does. And so Brendan Pfaadt had a FIP under 4 for the last 2 months of the season, and as we saw, including in person versus the Phillies.
Oh yeah.
Absolutely incredible in the playoffs.
Yeah, and Brendan Pfaadt's last name is they must have had a mistake in writing his last name, because I tried searching up his name and I could just not figure it out, and then you told me about that and actually I saw it on TV. His last name was crazy, and I would have never guessed that his last name would have been like that.
Yeah, that P, it's like P is in psychology.
Yeah, what the heck? It's like a pterodactyl, why is that
there? Yeah. So looking at their pitching staff, they really need 2 starting pitchers. They obviously have maybe the best 1-2 punch in all of baseball in Gallen and Kelly. That said, so they got their top guys. They don't need to go out and pick up an ace. They've essentially got 2 ace level pitchers. But they both made it through 2023 without getting hurt. And frankly, part of the reason that the Diamondbacks did so well is they call a baseball season a marathon, not a sprint. And a lot of how a lot of teams win, particularly with pitching, is by acquiring depth. So look at teams like the Dodgers, the Twins, the Rays, the Marlins. All of them made the playoffs, and all of them had massive injuries to their starting rotations.
Oh yeah.
But because they pushed young players down to start the season in AAA that had been at the major league level previously, it gave them a lot more depth. So they all of those teams essentially signed veterans to fill out all of their starting MLB rotation spots, and then they had minor leaguers and good minor leaguers who had great experience. Guys like Slade Cusoni and Ryan Nelson got key innings. But you don't want to start with those guys in the 4 and 5 spots in the rotation. You really want to start with them as the 6 and 7 guys back in AAA who can come up and fill valuable innings for you after the season gets started, because baseball attrition, especially to the starting rotation and pitching staff in general, happens so frequently. I mean, if you start the season with Slade at AAA, and let's say he's the 6th starting pitcher on your depth chart, come February 15th when they report to spring training, there's a very fair chance that he's in the opening day rotation, just because injuries happen to pitchers all the time. Yeah. They're constantly going down. So Ryan Nelson, Slade Cusoni, they are both fantastic fits as the 6th and 7th starting pitchers on the depth chart. Unfortunately, Dre Jameson, we'd love to see there too, but he's going to be out for all of 2024 after getting surgery, and so he's going to be missing the season, and they're going to need to fill in those back spots with some veterans, because like I said, I'd really like to see them build rotation depth like the Dodgers, Twins, Rays, Marlins, because the chances of their pitching staff staying as healthy in 2024 as it did in 2023 is almost impossible.
Yeah.
So hopefully they can fill those. There's lots of good starting pitchers, but the great thing is they don't need to break the bank on a top level starting pitcher. They can bring in a good solid 3/4 pitcher, if they can get a good solid 3 pitcher, move Pfaadt to the 4 spot, and then get another innings eater down at the bottom. That would be great. And again, we'll go over options next week. Yes. Who we have available. So let's look at the bullpen. Another shrewd pickup by Mike Hazen in Paul Sewald at the trade deadline. Sewald and Pham were so clutch for this team down the stretch, and even in the playoffs. And so I know Sewald had that one one moment where they had the Rangers in game 1 all locked up. They had a 5-3 lead, and with 2 outs, Sewell gives up a 2-run home run, and that hurts.
Yes.
But
that definitely did hurt watching that.
But he's fantastic. They got Ginkel and they got Chafin coming back. And so those 3 guys are absolute studs. And I know Chafin had a rough-looking ERA, but again, looking at FIP and xFIP, they were close to 3. He was absolute nails who just had a lot of unlucky bounces happen to him this past season.
And I think Ginkel was very good, and I love his name too, but I think he was very, very, very good.
Absolutely. And he looks like a WWE professional wrestler out there. I just absolutely love him. He looks like he belongs in the ring and not on the mound, which is great. But yeah, so looking at Chafin in particular, because everyone knows Sewell and Ginkel are fantastic, but I feel like Chafin gets a bad rap out of the bullpen because of some rough bounces his way, but his FIP was close to 3. He led the entire team in strikeouts at 12.5 strikeouts per 9, and that led the team by a large margin. And really, you have an elite relief pitcher in Chafin, and I have no doubts that he is going to be one of their 3 best pitchers, and it would not surprise me if he's their best reliever out of their bullpen in 2024 at all.
As everybody says, never judge a book by its cover. And
that's exactly right.
In baseball, never judge a book by its ERA.
I have never ever heard that expression applied to baseball before, but you're so right, because ERA, batting average, RBI, those are pitcher wins, those are even saves. All those things are what's on the cover, but when you open it up and you dig into the story of how that cover came to be, you find a much different journey and a much different answer to what that player really brings to the table. Mm-hmm. I love that analogy. That's brilliant.
Best analogy ever.
So Saul Frank had only a handful of innings, but he looked incredible in the playoffs. Another rookie. I think Saul Frank is staged for a really fantastic 2024. You also got so you've got 3, maybe even 4 guys already in the bullpen who are borderline studs, all of them. Very Razian relievers coming out of that bullpen, and even like the Guardians and the Twins, they got bullpens like that as well, and that can carry you a long way. And then they got Castro, Kyle Nelson, not to be confused with Ryan Nelson, and Manaply. They're all solid relievers. And I know, again, same things kind of apply to Manaply. That's funny. As Chafin, in that while he had an ERA that was kind of ugly looking, he had a minuscule walk rate and far and away the best ground ball rate on the entire pitching staff. He's the kind of guy that you want to bring in when you've got a runner on first or first and second and you need a double play to get out of that situation. Joe Manaply is your man.
I mean, hey, like I said before, never judge a book by its cover, and never judge a baseball player by their never judge a pitcher by their ERA, because they could just be absolutely really good in some moments. You know, they may not be like just absolutely amazing in every single thing. Like they could just have a no hitter. They just, some pitchers just have their moments in baseball.
Yeah, they got their roles, and Joe Manaply is kind of that fireman, the guy that you want to go to when you need when you got the runners on base and you need to get an out or 2 outs to prevent any runs from scoring. He's a great situational reliever. So that's 7 guys that they have already filling out their bullpen. That means they don't really need to add anybody else. But I'd like to see them add one more good arm to that bullpen.
Yeah. And
we'll talk about some more of those ideas next week. But let's keep moving on here. It's not really, to talk about those 7 guys, that A spot, it's not a priority. You can get a decent relief pitcher for a few $1 million. It doesn't take a lot. And they really should just add one more, because as previously mentioned, what happens to pitchers? They get injured. They are always getting injured, and relief pitchers even more so than starting pitchers. Yeah. And so we're going to need we're going to need depth there. All right, so what does this mean? We've got about $85 million on the books right now in ARB, once you add in ARB raises. Do you know what ARB raises are?
Maybe no.
So most people don't know what this means. Arbitration is when a player comes up to the majors, they get 3, sometimes 4 years where they get paid the major league minimum, which is about $700,000. And then after that, they go to what's called arbitration. And not many players actually make it to arbitration. Most of them agree on a contract with the team beforehand.
So, I'm guessing that's why not a lot of people know about arbitration.
Yeah, so arbitration is once you get 3 years of arbitration. Your first year is going to be usually a pretty small amount for most players. It's not going to be too much of a raise, maybe $500,000, which sounds like a crazy amount of money to you and me and everyone listening, most people listening to this, but that's what they're going to get. And so they're going to get $500,000 and then so a lot of players, but what they do is they comp them to when a player was in his first ARB year, what did other players who put up numbers like him get? And usually in year 2 and year 3, what did other players like that player get in those situations? And that's the kind of contract that they usually give them. And so once you give your ARB raises to everybody, you are looking at about $85 million on the books, give or take a few million. That leaves at least $45 million left to spend on the 2024 payroll. Possibly even 55 or 60 million. Kind of depends on where they go. Their previous high is 131 million in 2018. There's no reason after, it's pretty fair to expect them after making a World Series run to at least get right up against that $131 million record or previous high, or even surpass it. They had with 8, I think they hosted 8 playoff games. That should be a lot of extra money at the gate that they can pour into their team for 2024.
Yes.
So what do they need to get? Need number 1, they need to get a starting pitcher. I think this is how I would prioritize each of these. They need to get a starting pitcher. That's the most important thing.
Yes.
They also need a third baseman. They need a higher caliber third baseman than they do pitcher.
What we explained before is that they need a third baseman, and if we do get Miles Turner or Justin Turner, he's definitely not going to fill in that spot.
I love the mix-up of sports. That's a nice slip, like Jamie Carroll.
Yeah.
That's good. Yeah, so they need a starting pitcher, and there's not a lot of really high-end ace-level starting pitchers available on this market, but there are a ton of great mid-level starting pitchers that the Dbacks could really use. So hopefully they can pick up one of those guys, someone almost not quite as good as the top 2, but a better, more reliable option than Fott.
And we'll talk about that next week.
Yep. And then we see third base has a hole at it. You don't really want to trust Perdomo like we discussed.
Yes.
I just think, he's good, he's solid, he can play a lot of positions, he plays defense well, but his best position is as a utility man, not as a guy who's getting 500 plate appearances a year, but you want him more so in the boat of 300 plate appearances a year. That's when he's got his role, and that's where you want him. And then third base, hopefully a really high caliber third baseman. There aren't a ton of options out there, but there are a couple of guys. I don't expect them to go get like Jeimer Candelario.
Explain that for...
he's just a really good player, and probably a little probably is going to get bidded up out of the range of a team like the Diamondbacks. But I'd rather them pour that money into getting a better starting pitcher than into a third baseman. Third baseman could be left-handed, right-handed. Doesn't really matter. They just need a third baseman. They needed an outfielder. That would be the third most important position to fill. Like I said, preferably a right-hander that can play center field, but specifically can play right field. We need an outfielder that can play right field, a true right fielder. Now, say they bring back Lourdes Gurriel and that's it. I would just love to see them move Gurriel to right field permanently and Carroll to left field. Just swap those two. Carroll is kind of a perfect left fielder. He's so Juan Pierre. I know you don't know that name, not timely reference. Very Juan Pierre, or more recently Ben Revere-like outfielder. Just super fast guys who didn't have much of a throwing arm. To give you an idea, Corbin Carroll, he's in about the 30th percentile for arm strength for throwing velocity from the outfield. That's not very good. That is absolutely not what you want in right field. We saw that even come into play a couple of times in the playoffs where there were plays that the plate on balls hit out to right field, and Corbin Carroll just couldn't make the throw.
Yeah. And I would love to see Lourdes Gurriel back because he's my favorite player.
I would love to see Lourdes Gurriel back too, and it wouldn't take much, but that's for next week.
Yes.
So we got the outfielder. Need number 4. Their 4th most important need. They have a lot of needs, but none of them are going to take a lot of money to fulfill, which is really nice. You could throw $30 million at picking up a really good starting pitcher and third baseman, and then from there you've got another, we'll say $20 million to play with. You can add your outfielder. You need a 5th starter. That would be outfield 3rd highest ranking need, 5th starter 4th highest ranking need, relief pitcher your 5th highest ranking need, and then finally they do need a backup catcher on the team, someone who's a little more reliable than what they have in their system right now.
Yeah.
And so, but a relief pitcher and a catcher, you can add the caliber of relief pitcher that they need and a catcher. You could probably get that for $5 million combined. An outfielder, maybe you can throw 8 to 10 million at it, maybe 12 at most. A 5th starter, you can honestly get someone good for 8 million, 8 to 10 million. And then if you can throw another, get a third baseman for 10 or 12 million, 15 million even, and then a starting pitcher for 15 million or so.
And I feel like we've said this a lot, but we'll save that for next week.
Yes. And so, that's it. We'd love to have you follow our pod. Please smash that follow button, as the kids say on YouTube. And if you are watching this on YouTube, smash the subscribe button, and you'll find us nerding on the Dbacks on what platforms?
Well, you find us on TikTok. I haven't made our TikTok account yet because I forgot to do that yesterday, but it will definitely be up by the time at least the first viewer sees this. We're also on YouTube if you're watching this on YouTube. We're also on Spotify, which if you're watching on Spotify, you would know. Or anywhere that you get podcasts. Or anywhere you could podcast. And we'll have our content up on X as well. Yes. Formerly known as Twitter. Yes. So if you're a boomer and you don't know, it's called X. Ouch, burn. We don't want to abandon our audience like that. I'm just teasing. Yeah. And I know you are too. So with that, hey, thanks for checking out our very first show. We'd love to hear your comments, your feedback, remarks, any suggestions that you have. And for next week, we're definitely gonna get Team Max. It's not just gonna be this one. we have a drawing. It's for like a music thing. Yep. So the interface did not have the right inputs in it. As you can see, I'm a musician back here. Oh yeah. And so I have gear for it, but needed to get some different stuff. So that'll be it, and really appreciate you taking the time with us today to hear what we have to say, and looking forward to hearing what you have to say in response. I just can't wait until I see this go very far, and I am so excited for what is to come. And this is our goodbye, but we have one more clip, and it's kind of funny for our first pod. We have a little clip at the end, and I think it's very, very funny. Me and my dad, we'll definitely put it. It's a little outtake from our first effort. Yeah. All right.
With that, everyone, thank you for listening. Appreciate you. Have yourself a wonderful day and a terrific week.
And we're the Nerds. I'm Son/Phoenix, and this is
Dad/Chris. And we're nerding on the D-backs.
We'll see you next time.
Nerding on the D-backs.
Woo! Are we testing this?
No, go ahead.
Can we start over?